They came to the other side of the sea, to the country of the Gerasenes, and when he stepped out of the boat, immediately a man out of the tombs with an unclean spirit met him. He lived among the tombs, and no one could restrain him anymore, even with a chain, for he had often been restrained with shackles and chains, but the chains he wrenched apart, and the shackles he broke in pieces. And no one had the strength to subdue him. Night and day among the tombs and on the mountains, he was always howling and bruising himself with stones. When he saw Jesus from a distance, he ran and bowed down before him, and he shouted at the top of his voice, "What have you to do with me, Jesus, Son of the God Most High? I adjure you by God, do not torment me." For he had said to him, "Come out of the man, you unclean spirit." Then Jesus asked him, "What is your name?" He replied, "My name is Legion, for we are many." He begged him earnestly not to send him out of the country. Now, there on the hillside, a great herd of swine was feeding, and the unclean spirits begged him, "Send us into the swine, let us enter them." So he gave them permission. And the unclean spirits came out and entered the swine, and the herd, numbering about 2,000, rushed down the steep bank into the sea and were drowned in the sea. I had planned to preach this one from the pulpit in the sanctuary. And then this crazy year intervened again. And I was informed I may have been exposed to the coronavirus, and then told that the testing was so backed up for the potential contact that it would be 7 to 10 days before I knew I was even potentially infected. So I'm home, being careful so as not to potentially infect anyone else. And hopefully next week I'll be back in the pulpit. And yes, I'm feeling fine. And yes, I'll let you know if that changes. I love this story. And it seems very apt right now. After all, it starts with an unwell man in quarantine. Did you notice? He lived among the tombs. He lived where no one else would. He lived among the dead. He lived unclean and uncared for. He had exhausted all attempts to care for him, to the point they finally just tried chains, but the chains couldn't hold him. It's interesting that they don't say that he hurt anyone else. You would think that if he had been doing that and was unable to be controlled, that they would have taken more drastic measures, but we do see that he was hurting himself. He bruised himself. He wasn't doing well. The world had gotten to him. The worst of the world, the legion of demons, had become too much. And nobody knew how to be a brother or a sister, a sibling, or a neighbor to him. His problems were intractable. What are we supposed to do about this? You'll also notice that there isn't condemnation for them either in this story. Some things are beyond us. It doesn't abdicate our responsibility to try, to be compassionate, but we can also acknowledge that there are some things we don't know how to fix. We don't know how to have a thriving economy and a safe space for people during a pandemic. Any option we choose will probably prioritize one value over another. We don't know how to gather for fellowship and keep people distant so they don't get sick. I mean, communion with others is critical. We're social beings. Health is also critical. Which of these will we prioritize? We live with uncertainties. None of us like them. Well, a few people do, but most of us don't. We'd like someone to say, this is how we do it. And because we're uncomfortable with uncertainty, we'll listen to them even if they don't know, whether they're church leaders or bosses or politicians. What do you do with a man who's not in his right mind, who could hurt anyone at any moment, and you have exhausted all your possibilities? Well, you put him in the tombs. Well, let's get on with our lives. Well, that comes with a cost. For him and for us. Now, some of you are probably saying to yourselves, what is Casey trying to say to us? Or, I know what Casey's trying to say to us. Well, not so fast. I'm not trying to give you a coded message. I know that's how some of you think this works. A few years ago, someone came through the line at the end of the service and he said to me, I hear what you're really saying to us, Pastor, and I couldn't agree more. And I thought, great. What did they think I was really saying? So I just want to say this. We are in a deeply uncertain time. Whether it's COVID or race, economics, politics, everything is wild right now. And it seems like we don't have good answers. I don't think that just means anything goes, though. I think it means we have to really think about what our priorities are. Because that will shape how we respond to uncertain times, because everything has a cost. I think it's interesting that the demons name Jesus in this passage. They often do that in Scripture. They recognize who Jesus is before the humans do. But the name they give him here is Son of the Most High God. El Elyon in Hebrew. The God who takes highest priority. God is first, like the first commandment, you shall have no other gods before me, El Elyon. So you shall not put ego before me. You shall not put safety before me. You shall not put riches before me. You shall not put status before me. You shall not put country before me. You shall not put ideology before me. You shall not put anything before me. El Elyon. And it is the Son of the Most High God who can fix that particular problem, that story. Jesus has not yet fixed our particular story, but it's Jesus who fixes that story, who fixes that intractable problem, who heals him. Now, it doesn't happen here, but in the Lucan version of this story, the man asks Jesus if he can follow him, and Jesus says no. He sends him back home. He restores him. He wants people to see that intractable problems are not forever intractable. The present is not the future. There is a hope that can't be seen. That's largely what faith is about, a belief in things unseen. It's not an erasure of uncertainty. It's a belief in a way to move through uncertainty, to acknowledge it and still live in a way that looks to God as our highest priority. I don't mean this to be a simple equation. We trust in God, therefore we won't get sick. That's actually terrible theology. When the greatest example of faith we have ever had was Jesus, and Jesus is still acted upon by the evil and brokenness of the world, faith doesn't mean that crucifixions don't happen. Faith is about how we live amidst the intractable problems. What do we prioritize? What are the values of God that we prioritize? I'll help you out. These are what I prioritize. You might prioritize differently. I trust that love is the way to go. So in the midst of the intractable and in the midst of uncertainty, I will make decisions based upon love for others as best as I can. I trust that safety and justice for the most vulnerable are values that God cares about. I trust that because it's all over Scripture, and today's Scripture is a perfect example. So I will try to make decisions that prioritize that. I trust that God cares about the truth, so I will do my best to tell the truth about what I see and experience. And I trust that God cares about honesty, so I'll try to acknowledge when I don't know the full truth. And when someone who takes a different view from me has something important to say. I trust that God is compassionate. I trust that that God seeks our good. I trust that God is our highest and best aim. I trust that God doesn't want me to be scared. And I trust that God doesn't want me to scare others. I trust that bearing each other's burdens is the right way to live. I trust in the love of God, the compassion of God. I trust that God is the right priority to seek. I trust in the God Most High. Amidst all this uncertainty, what is it that you will trust?